Hey, I'm Bryan Fenley, and joining me today is Dan Teitscheid, motorsports broadcasting executive and icon. And this is a place, as a lot of you are familiar with, Dan is, and many of you out there as well, where I bring on folks in sports media where we don't just talk about their careers. We go beyond that. And I think that as we get ready to have Dan on, I think you would appreciate this pun, and that is the track here of this conversation is not just going to be his work. We're going to go off-roading here, if you will, and gear shift between, we'll talk about different aspects of his career, but we're also going to emphasize his being a father of three and his family life and those aspects to get the whole version, the whole story of Dan Teitscheid, and do it from a place of empathy, do it from a place of compassion. Without further ado, here is Dan. He joins me now. And if you are so inclined, don't forget to subscribe. Here's the conversation. If that picture behind him did not give it away, I don't know what to tell you. My guest today is Dan Teitscheid, President GM, Speed Sport One, works in motorsports. He is also President, Distribution and Development at Obsession Media. Just launched a new channel, Speed Sport One. We're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about things outside of work, learn about him from a wholer perspective as the family man, as the dad, the upbringing, and the change in career paths. We're going to get it all here in a really nice vignette-like conversation on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and Tennis Channel. Dan, excited to have you on. Thanks for being a part of this.
Thank you, Bryan. It's nice to get this chance to talk and meet you in person, as close as it can be, and I look forward to talking to you.
What is the best part about being a dad?
Oh gosh, well, I'm new to being a grandfather within the last 8 months, so I got a new perspective on it. The best part about being a dad is having a grandchild. But I think we have three great kids and now a grandchild. We have a wonderful son-in-law. We've always been very involved with the kids. And the early parts of my career was difficult, to be around all the time because I was literally moving nonstop in some of the earlier years of cable television. But again, it was I met my wife in the industry. She was with Time Warner, so God bless her for, it's probably the greatest thing that ever happened. I meet her and she's willing to let me go do my thing. And she embraced, being a stay-at-home mom as we started having kids, and it allowed me with a clean conscience to really go for it. But I always make sure that the kids were first and foremost. And so I'd fly overnight or whatever it took to make sure I was at every single game or event or whatever it might be, a little Halloween party, whatever it was.
Even though, Dan, you're at this established part of your career, what about the wonder and the excitement of what you get to do still makes you feel like you are a kid to this day?
Look, I work in television. I mean, it's the greatest thing in the world, in the entertainment. I mean, I came out of school in the 80s, the Milliken 80s. So naturally, I went right into the finance business, investment banking. And I thought that's just what you did. And I did I saw that I was in investments for probably 8 years before I had this buddy who kept telling me about this crazy cable business and how awesome it was. And one day I just couldn't, I just felt I got to make a change. I can't sit behind a desk the rest of my life. And it was the greatest. Ultimately, people gave me an opportunity to go to work with them. And that was at Viacom with Showtime. And it just, from day one, I saw what it really, I experienced what it really felt like to truly do something that was just fun and exciting and that you really liked. So I was so fortunate to be given the opportunity. And mind you, this is in the days when we were looking at the phone book. We didn't have a computer. We were looking at the phone book and reading, multi-channel news to try to find out who the players were. And then I was sending notes to them or trying to, call the operator to get a phone number for them and reach out to them and see if they, take a guy like me with my background. So,
and you went to law school as well?
No, I was at UCLA undergrad in finance or economics, and came out, and I've had the opportunity since then through the cable industry and their management programs to spend a little time, the certificate programs that they have at Harvard Law School and then Harvard Business School.
That's what I saw. Okay, so you're part of those programs, and I was curious to know, having such, and there's never one uniform way of getting into television. It's really a unique path where it's not like you're a doctor and you take all these years of schooling and then you're able to practice. Everybody has a different path, but the unique path that you took in going some way in direction that was completely unrelated to television, how has that shaped the lens you see television through, given the background that you had before TV?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, coming from my background, the business side of television felt very comfortably. I have no interest in being in front of the camera. I have no interest in. I'm not creative, so they're not going to get anything out of me there. So the business part of cable television, when I initially got in, felt very comfortable. Right, it is really more of a sales and relationship, and strategically designing packaging and pricing that all kind of fell into what my sensibilities were and how my mind worked. So for me, that was perfect. But what I also think it did, as I got to experience other people that were very, very passionate about certain aspects of our business. Let's say, we'll take an example for MTV. I spent 16 years at Viacom. 15 of those years were at MTV, and I think it's just that I was so impressed by anybody with talent, especially as it related to being able to perform at the level that the artist did. To me, whether it was country or it was rock or it was rap, I was so impressed by it. And I didn't fall into one category where I only like rock and roll music or only like certain type of. So in a way, I think it gave me kind of a broader perspective and being able to accept exactly what the industry was, just purely from a talent standpoint. So I could talk relatively dangerously with anybody about whatever type of music they were interested in, because I didn't have an extreme passion for any one of them, or maybe I should say that a passion for across the board on just the talent as a whole.
Yeah, you're able to.
It worked that way when I went into sports at ESPN and Disney. Again, it's stick and ball sports. I played my whole life growing up, but again, I wasn't the guy who could tell what Willie Mays batting average was in a particular year or anything like that. I just knew I enjoyed the entertainment value. So maybe I came into the business as a viewer, and I always remained a viewer.
And having that perspective allows you to know what the viewer wants, what the viewer likes, and what is the viewer getting at Speed Sport One?
Well, with Speed Sport One, there's a lot of great motorsport networks and developments out there. Conversations have taken place over the years amongst many people like myself, I'm sure, but just about what would the ultimate motorsports network look like if you could create it, right? And in the past, there really wasn't this opportunity because the television landscape up until streaming really started was really dominated by a few very big companies that determined what networks they were going to put on, and then the network groups that were creating these networks, these channels, could leverage everything they had. So they were telling the cable companies what they were going to carry, and the cable companies are telling all the small content creators whether they were going to carry them or not. But they had to go and carry the big groups first, and there was a lot of contractual and leverage going on there. And with the new streaming opportunities with the platforms, Samsung, Pluto TV, Zumo, LG, and all these guys, Roku, they've opened up the doors to content. The availability of content, every different niche type of content, or a just much larger variety of content that's available to the viewers, the consumers, that they maybe didn't even know existed, or they just couldn't find because cable operators or the big companies decided what they were going to watch. And from a motorsports standpoint, there's so much motorsports going on in America at any one time, and literally hundreds of races a night on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights during race season that fans are attending and watching, but it's all very limited to what you see on TV. So we wanted to create a television network that was focused on live racing, live motorsports across the board, and with a variety across the board, right? Whether it be GT racing or open wheel racing or off-road racing, motorcycle racing, but also it wanted to be somewhat of a lifestyle channel, to the extent that we told the stories behind the motorsport, the sport of motorsports, right? And the families and the teams and the drivers and the series. So that's how we're building this network, to be just a unique variation of what a motorsports network has looked like up to this point.
When you
And
get,
again, we're not just trying to create another network.
Sure.
We really believe this is a real vacuum that exists out there. And we think not only can we drive viewership, but that drives advertisers, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you've got a lot of awesome partners around you, and I'm excited to see this thing grow. The idea of going into the garage and behind the scenes and getting those stories on top of just the strict coverage of the event, what do you think that does to lure people in? How has that lured you into the sport as well?
Yeah. Well, I think the motorsports pretty falls into the 10 categories as probably the music did, and then the general sports and so forth. That while I loved motorsports, and everybody's a big fan of F1 these days, but that's really, in a way, the story, right? F1 did Drive Survive with Netflix, and what it did, I think, it opened up the story behind the racing. And I saw it in my own household, right, which is a perfect focus group. I have, 2 boys, a daughter, and my wife, and there's a varying level of interest in all sports within the family. But when it came to motorsports, my wife and daughter just weren't as interested in it. And even my kids to a certain extent. And once Drive to Survive came out, I saw this immense interest, not only in watching Drive to Survive, but then when Sunday came along during the race season and F1's on, they're rooting for individuals that they feel they know, and it's a whole new dynamic. Everybody's gathered around the TV set on Sunday and they're watching that. And NASCAR's doing it with Race for the Championship, I think it's called, if I say that correctly. But it's no different than, say, Hard Knocks behind, football. I think it's just giving you the stories behind the sport allows you to broaden your audience, scale it. So while we are going to be, first and foremost, authentic in the motorsports that we deliver and the story behind it, we want to make sure that we create compelling and entertaining programming for people who might be casual fans of motorsports and or just the general audience. So again, like I said, in my family, it's very exciting to see my family involved in motorsports for the first time, because in the past they'd walk by me and probably make a comment that, yeah, my dad's watching motorsports because that's his business. Now they'll draw right into the couch and start watching it with me. So
Dan Teitscheid is with me, of course. He wears many hats: president GM of Speed Sport One, president distribution and development at Obsession Media. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and Tennis Channel. So you're sitting in there, and what I notice is you're watching these events and you're a sponge. You love to learn. You are enthralled in content. The idea of that curiosity that you carry with you in all aspects of your life, how much do you attribute that to where your career has led you in the roads you've taken and the ways in which you've gone about your work?
Well, I think, from a curiosity standpoint, I know, I instill in my kids, that, to, even if you don't have natural curiosity towards something, the more you start digging, the more you'll learn, and the more curious you probably become, because you want to figure out how it all works. I think, a big adage in our house is, and my kids, they'll roll their eyes every time I say it to them, but if you don't ASK, you don't GET, right? So you got to ask to get what you want. And that's in every aspect of your life. And if you really want to try to understand more about something that might have an interest in, you got to ask, and you got to reach out to people. And what's been amazing to me is that, people are so open and willing to share what they know with you if you're genuinely interested in asking, what it is you want. I think, my parents always made us believe that there wasn't anything that we couldn't do. We didn't have a lot, but we had everything we wanted, or everything we needed, I guess. And made us believe there wasn't anything we couldn't do. When I was looking to get into cable television, because my buddy convinced me, and he was trying to help introduce me to people, and I'm reaching out to people on my own. In the back of my head, I said, God, if I could get in this business and someday either work for MTV or work for ESPN, I would die and go to heaven. It'd be like a dream, right? And I've been so fortunate in my career to be able to do both of those things, and it all developed out of me asking, just asking for the opportunity. And then, of course, most importantly, people being willing to give me that opportunity there. And with my current situation, it's for a guy who's in motorsports and television, it's another dream come true, because I'm working around such incredible talent between the guys at Speed Sport, Joe Tripp and Raf Shaheen, and the Obsession Media Group, who has such an incredible background in launching television networks and developing motorsports networks between Nick Rhodes and Roger Werner. I mean, I am definitely in a situation where I feel a bit of an imposter syndrome, being here and being at the helm of the network for these guys. So
you provide a special skill to all of this to make it all come together. And keeping with the theme of you working in motorsports, when you assess what you've done career-wise, where has it felt like a race to you?
Well, I feel right now it's a serious race, right? I have, we took on this new venture. I joined the group 2 months ago, and we are in the process of launching a network. It hit the trades last week. We're at the performance, racing industry show this week. It's a race, right? But I think every time there's a technology advancement or change in our industry, it feels like a race, because the opportunity exists for a bit, and then the window tends to close. And I think with the FAST platforms, the free ad-supported streaming television platforms that are that have developed over the last, say, 3 years or so, it is really a race to get your content, exposed, so you find a spot on that roster, and then you're able to develop it, right? It's truly a free market now with this new FAST platform business, because you are only as good as your viewership, because that's the only way you're going to generate revenue. And so it's almost made a full circle in television, right, from the original broadcast days. So anytime there's a change in, I think, technology, it creates new opportunities that you want to try to take advantage of, and you want to be in a position to be able to take advantage of. I'm blown away by technology, and we can watch what we want, anywhere we want, anytime we want, anymore, right? And it just keeps changing. It's blowing my mind, all the time, that it gets a little bit better, a little bit more unique, and something I would have never guessed, certain advancements I would have never been able to predict 10 years ago. So,
yeah. Go for it. Sorry, Dan.
No, it's been a wild ride in this whole industry. I've been in it for 30 plus years now, and it's always a wild ride. So, it's the greatest business in the world. That's why, I'm not really ever working too hard, in the sense that this is great stuff. I can do it till 10 at night every night, and feel like I'm just trying to figure out the next viewership opportunity out there for the fans.
Your wife is a big fan of you. What has she done for you to make all of this possible? I know you hearken back to it a little bit as being that support system for you, but the priceless presence that she brings, how has that helped you in more ways than you could describe?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned a little earlier, she gave me the ability to go be me, right? Which, to be me, I get hyper focused, and I'll put everything I got into something, and she gave me that space. I knew, that she was taking such good care of our kids all the time, stay-at-home mom, watching out for them, and she sacrificed her career for me to go do that. So that meant a lot to me, of course, and it continually does. But on a business base, she's got a great mind. She helps me when I get maybe too focused, right? I'm down the rabbit hole a little bit. She helps me, fix things that I'm trying to fix, or comes up with great suggestions on things that she was instrumental in just coming up with our, just barely tweaking our tagline to the network here. And it just came, we thought, all of us, the execs were all, we kind of narrowed it down to 5 different taglines we were going to use for Speed Sport. And she made just one little tweak one night while I'm sitting on the couch watching TV with her. And I said, what do you think of, the taglines? We've narrowed it down to it. And trust me, we'd spent weeks on it. She goes, yeah, but why don't you just call it the Motorsport Network, just like the Ohio State University, and it's like, wait a minute, so, and not that it's, life changing, but I threw it by the partners. Everybody said, that's the one right there. So like it took her 5 seconds to review some of my business or something we were working on and just give us a good idea. And she does that with me. She helps me out in that sense. She's got a great mind for business. And so whenever I'm stuck on something, I can count on her to help me through it. So
it took her 5 seconds to figure that out. The first 5 seconds that you got to hold your grandchild, what was that like for you, being a dad of 3? But then, as you said when we first started this conversation, this is a whole nother role that you're playing. A man who has played many different roles, whether it's at home or it's in his work life.
Yeah, well, anybody that's a grandparent out there, or when you become a grandparent, or even a parent, that moment when you realize that you've got this new little baby in your hands. I think that the best part about it right now is, and it's probably the cliche you always hear from people, but at my stage of my life, right, I can truly enjoy every second I get to hold her in my arms or play with her a little bit, versus when I was younger, I had so many anxieties, right? I had anxiety, how am I going to support this family now? And every time you had one, right, you're going, oh my gosh, here we go. When you had to work a little bit harder and you had to, you're strung out from lack of sleep and everything else. So holding the granddaughter for the first time was really amazing. And I make sure that every moment I spend, I am thinking about her at that moment. So I'm not thinking about something business oriented or something else I've got to do. I really am. And I guess that's just comes with age and maturity and the reality that it doesn't go on forever.
How can you applaud yourself in the way in which you describe the challenges of trying to figure out how you're going to pay for everything and having the kids and working as hard as you have? And how often do you let yourself sit in that moment of saying, wow, I really did this. And at the time, I didn't know what it was going to be like, how it would turn out, or if it would turn out, but it has, and being able to sort of metaphorically pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm there yet. Maybe that comes with retirement. I'm not sure, because I think for me at least, there's always that insecurity that you got to keep doing a little bit more and being a little bit better and staying relevant and on top of things. So I don't think that I've gotten to that place every day. And I guess I can have moments of satisfaction, but it seems like then there's always another hill to climb or another success to try to pursue, even if they're small business successes. But I mean, I feel very fortunate to be in the situation I am and had the career that I've had to this point. I think it's I'm living proof that if you can find something you love or love something you're doing, success has a good chance of following you, because you probably give it a little bit more effort and spend a little more time doing it, and you're probably a little better at it if you truly enjoy it. So yeah, no, I've been very fortunate that way. There's no laurels to rest on yet, because again, I think that imposter syndrome sneaks in and saying, okay, I better stay one step ahead of this before they figure me out. So
well, and I think having that has made you as successful as you've become. That idea of you're never settling. You're always looking to what's next. You're always looking to add on and to see what's ahead of you. And you're probably going to have that the rest of your life. I would assume even when you retire, Dan, that's going to be hard to let go of. You'll find other ways of your life to kind of find that comes in, that need to always challenge yourself. And I think that as we wrap up this conversation, that has been sort of at the baseline of what has made you so successful. And with all that you've done in motorsports, I can't think of a person who's better in the driver's seat of a launching of a motorsports network with all of your experience in television than you did. Dan Teitscheid, I'm Bryan Fenley. Dan, thanks for giving us an introspective look at your life, going beyond just the work, but then also the launching of your network, your new network, Speed Sport One, which we're excited to be watching, but also what it's like at home. And I think that's another important part of who you are as well.
Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate the opportunity.